Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Paper Fold. I am your host, Sarah, and I am so glad to be back after being missing in action a little longer than I intended. I got caught up in the perfect storm of the Noted at Noted Awards, my summer stationery trends deadline, and the end of the craziest school year ever. All that was seasoned with a phantom podcast interview that I have devoted a lot of time to chasing down. And while this is not the episode with the interview in question, fingers crossed, I will have it for you eventually. Today's guest is someone who I have wanted to have on for a really long time, pretty much since I started this podcast, because not only has she been shaking up the industry pretty much since she came on the scene, she is just a magnificent interview, as you will shortly hear for yourself. Victoria Venturi was living in LA and working in publicity and PR for major brands. We're talking Fox, Hilton, Disney, while also trying to make a name for herself as a comedienne or an actress when she started Paper Epiphanies, essentially with bits from her routine serving as card copy. But Paper Epiphanies is about so much more than beautifully letterpressing swear words as it was first recognized for in the industry. It is about normalizing difficult, authentic, and vulnerable conversations amongst women, whether it concerns navigating the workplace or motherhood, with humor and charm. She really approaches greeting cards and communicating in the medium conceptually. And I really believe that this approach is what keeps greeting cards fresh and evolving and alive. And Victoria's business has come full circle, as you'll hear, with the opening of the award-winning Paper Epiphanies flagship store in Portland, Oregon on this past April Fool's Day. It's all coming up after this. Hey, Paper Peeps. So by now, many of my listeners are familiar with the force of stationary nature, better known as Girl with Knife. But if you aren't, time to change all that. From the first moment I spied her booth at her New York Now trade show debut in 2019, I was smitten with this cutting edge range that the world was calling out for. We all just didn't know it yet. Everything is nimbly collaged to life, slice by careful slice by the talented and exquisite Alicia Castaldi. This stylish collection of cards, journals, and notepads that have sprung to life under this fashionista's exacting knife is sharp, snarky, sleek, and occasionally very sweet, just like that BFF who would love to hear from you right now. For that reason, whenever I get my hands on Girl with Knife merchandise, I hoard it and use it most sparingly. Alicia recently launched Gift Wrap, and if you're already a fan of her range, you're familiar with her patterns and quality, but these super thick sheets elevate any gift from off the rack to atelier. Her recent releases of Midnight Botanical, Rare Creatures, and Chasing Dreams bring the total styles that slay up to 10. And if you're like me and that you fall in love with a range and want to reside in that world, you're in luck. Alicia recently unveiled Knife House, which was one of the few good things I can think of that came out of 2020. That was when Alicia shifted her operation from LA to this newly renovated concept home in Palm Springs. This completely private, walled and gated estate features panoramic mountain views and countless luxe surprises. Take a tour through its magnificent blush pink doors at www.knifehousepalmsprings.com or find it on Instagram at knifehousepalmsprings. Good luck getting your jaw off the floor as you take in this perfect California adult playground. These glamorous digs are available for photo shoots, film projects, special events, and short-term rentals. But just as importantly, all that exquisite Palm Springs flora and fauna have inspired Alicia's soon-to-be-released journal and notepads. She tells me that they're also expanding into home decor, which I, for one, absolutely can't wait to see. So now that you've glimpsed this wonderful world, you need this cutting edge lifestyle brand in your life. Find Girl with Knife in hundreds of shops across the US and over half a dozen countries. Alicia and Girl with Knife have also been featured in New York Magazine, LA Business Journal, BuzzFeed, and of course, Stationery Trends. I've run her work there countless times. Alicia was one of our 10 designers to watch in 2020 and proceeded to live up to that designation when last May, 2 out of her 3 nominated cards took top honors at the Noted and Noted virtual greeting card competition. Then, for our winter 2021 issue of Stationery Trends, Alicia designed the 10 designers to watch frontispiece for us. It is something else if you haven't seen it yet. Also, as of 2021, Alicia is represented by none other than the Daniel Richards showrooms in Atlanta and Dallas. Dan's eye is renowned in this biz, so his representing Girl with Knife is unsurprising, but it also means that this brand needs to be on your design radar stat. Check out this beguiling range at the recently refreshed girlwithknife.com. Right now, the theme is Season of Fierce, and I think we can all use one of those about now. I guarantee your stationery will slay. We're here in the Paper Fold. I have Victoria with me. Victoria, welcome to the Paper Fold.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's so funny you say that because this whole time I've been doing it, like every time I saw you or like heard you quoted, I was like, I'm going to have Victoria on. I just have to get my ducks in a row.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk today.
It's really fun. And as I mentioned to you when we were prepping, we're at the point in our culture where when I have a podcast guest, I have to listen to all their appearances on other podcasts. So while I was prepping for this interview, I listened to the 3 other podcasts you've been on. So first I listened to Proof to Product with Katie Hunt. That was really informative, but pretty much what I expected right. Since I witnessed the Paper Epiphanies trajectory firsthand. And it was kind of early on too that you spoke to her. I did really like your advice for building relationships with editors. So anyone who wants to know more about that should give that episode a listen. Yeah. Then I listened to The Imperfect Feminist, where you talked about running a feminist business, and you brought up a lot of really interesting points about your approach to business, which is really already about empowering women that I know we'll touch on later. But it was your appearance on a Portland podcast called The Imperfect Mama that really got me. I knew it was going to be something else as soon as I heard the host doing an ad with such enthusiasm for a Portland place to get a Brazilian or a back wax. And she was so enthusiastic. It made me want to move to Portland.
Yeah.
Because in Cleveland, if you call a salon and ask if they do Brazilians, they'll be laughing at you before you hang up. And don't ask how I know this. But it was a really engaging, fun episode. And really, I had no idea that when you first moved to LA, you were an actress. You were reading for roles like hooker number 2. I love that your response was, if I'm going to play the hooker, I need to be hooker number 1. So, I've got to wonder how these experiences informed your approach to creating, what can only be defined as a feminist range of stationery. It's kind of a crappy world for young women at times out there. So how did these experiences inform the messaging that you put out there?
Definitely. I mean, that's a great question. I think, not only being a young woman, but being a young woman in Los Angeles, trying to start a stand-up comedy and be an actress, I think was quite a interesting journey and provided a lot of fun content for the cards that you see in my line now. But I do think even, 2007 to 2009 is when I was really doing stand-up comedy and acting pretty much full time in Los Angeles. It was even different than it is now. I mean, now with Netflix and female comedians are kind of empowered in a new way, which is awesome. But I think I took a lot of that experience of double standards. I think women are often told, like, don't be a slut, or they're like, but be kind of slutty so that guys will like you, or, don't be too feminist in business, but don't look like a man either. It's like you get all these mixed messages that women are given all day long about sex, career, marriage, motherhood. And so Paper Epiphanies is kind of that dichotomy of, let's talk about all these double standards and let's just kind of have an authentic conversation. Motherhood is awesome and beautiful and hard and messy. And I think for a long time, greeting cards were kind of liars. We kind of just put what we thought was supposed to be on a card, what marriage was supposed to be.
Right. Or buy into these sort of like saccharine truths that our culture sort of put out for 100%. Us.
Yeah. Like, congrats on this beautiful journey into motherhood and a baby and beauty and happiness, which for some women that is, and for a lot of women it's not. And we definitely don't make cards for every single, experience in life, because there's so many, but we do try to kind of highlight some of those other ones and some of those double standards, especially as women, that we experience. So that journey definitely has informed a lot of the cards that we write.
So you've said with Paper Epiphanies, you want women to know their why, which I think is so cool. So can you talk a little bit about creating this space where empowerment intersects with humor?
Definitely. First of all, I think we need to laugh at ourselves more. I think we're all imperfect and messy. And I think our cards give people, but most specifically women, an opportunity to laugh at themselves. And our cards aren't mean. I think some stationery lines do that well. They are very, they pick at you, or they're making fun of your age. All of our aging cards are age positive. It's more about, let's laugh together at how fucked up this situation is. Or let's talk about the fact that this happened to you and it's so shitty. And like, why hasn't anyone just directly said this to you? And I think there is this intersection of vulnerability and authenticity that can be funny. That expression, we have to laugh or we're going to cry. I think we really play with that a lot. And we kind of call out those moments that are really hard, but be really funny at times too.
Absolutely. And that's like a very private thing that goes on between women that you sort of brought into this new format, which is like really shocking. Like it's a really, really revolutionary idea to me.
Definitely. And I think when we started it, especially 7 years ago, it was kind of like people would focus on the profanity, right? Like, oh, this card says fuck. And so that was kind of how our line was defined, when actually it was much, much more about having a real conversation and not so much about just being profane. And if you really know Paper Epiphanies and you read our cards, you can see that the copy is our strong suit. That's what we do best, as we write. And we write in a way that brings people into those real conversations. And yeah, sometimes it's profane, but oftentimes it's vulnerable or just straight down the middle, or humorous. So it kind of runs the gamut of different emotions for sure.
Right. Well, like people were so shocked that you were letterpressing the word fuck, but really what the shocking thing
is the word fuck. I mean, now it's useless.
Now it's nothing.
Like, sacrilegious, but now.
Right. Yeah, no, it was sacrilegious, but really the more shocking thing was that you were bringing this vernacular into this, centuries old format. Hey, Paper Peeps. So Kitty Meow Boutique has been a fabulous client of mine for a while now. So hopefully many of my listeners are familiar with not just the dazzling wares from this Chicagoland house of paper, but also its amazing founder, a force of nature better known as Catherine Hildner. This mom of two, with another scheduled to arrive soon, has created a most intoxicating stationery range. I define the Kitty Meow aesthetic as polished and very smart. Think of the sharpest outfit you own that you feel like $1 million in, but in stationery form. Everything from typography to envelope choice comes together to pack a most enticing punch. But this range is not just about the surface. It's about honoring those connections with those we care about most. And you'll see once you visit kittymeowboutique.com that the wares are divided into witty and sweet because, as Catherine puts it, sometimes you feel a little saucy and sometimes you don't. But Kitty Meow Boutique is so much more than just another pretty face in the marketplace. The empowering messaging found on her cards, invitations, journals, coasters, art prints, and enamel pins elevates the range into something that makes you feel not just seen, but good about yourself too. Everything is essentially a little lift, visually and emotionally, for not just those you love, but you as well. Not only is Kitty Meow available for your personal shopping needs, it's also available wholesale to all those shops looking for something new with which to excite their customers. She's on Faire. Visit kittymeowboutique.faire.com and get your shop started. Finally, I think what I love about Catherine most is that she is really all about living your best life, as you'll see for yourself beneath the education tab on her site. She offers KMB Signature Collective, a mastermind for women in the product-based business world who have a love for paper and giftable items, who have an idea and a plan, but need guidance and support to be successful in their efforts. I so agree with Catherine. It's so important to be surrounded by like-minded women and leaders who are willing to put in the work to lift each other up. For that reason, it's not a course. It's a friggin' transformation, people. And Catherine has also started my second favorite podcast, Dreams to Plans, with another brilliant force of nature, my girlfriend Renee, to elevate your daydreams to actual, tangible plans. Oh, and if you're on Clubhouse, follow Kitty Meow so you can tune in to her weekly room Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Small Business Savvy, Insider Secrets You Need to Know. I checked it out for myself last week, and it was just the dose of inspiration and confidence my day needed. So get those good vibes going at kittymeowboutique.com and tell them Sarah sent you. So my first thought, like when you first came onto the scene, when I heard your company name, no lie, I was like, great name, but Epiphany, really? Like I already have so much trauma around the word stationery and it being misspelled so often. So most people don't know what an epiphany is, let alone how to spell it. So like, I want to know what kind of response you've gotten over the years. Do people get it? Were you explaining people how to spell it for the first 3 years in business?
This is a great question. I was laughing when I read it. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, loves to go sugar paper. Now there's a great name.
Why couldn't you think of a name like that?
She loves to just say that. Like she says it at least twice a year, like just as a reminder that I failed at choosing the right business name. No, I do.
That was a great gift you gave her. Right? Forever. Yes, she can use it. She can pull it out of her hat.
100%. I think, there's definitely pros and cons to the word epiphanies. I think spelling obviously is the big one. But I do kind of secretly love the fact that we're asking people to rise to the occasion. Like if you know our card line, you know that it's highbrow comedy, it's deeper conversations. It's not for everyone. And so I think if I have to define the word epiphanies for you, I love it. Let me bring you into our world. Let me tell you about our company. And, I ghostwrite for a few other lines, and one of them is called Paper Rebel. And I was there for the creation of that name. And I couldn't help but be a little bit envious, like Paper Rebel, like Jesus, like, fuck, it's so simple. Like it's just so simple. But then the more I thought about it, our card line isn't simple. And epiphanies occur in all times of life, all occasions of life, these spontaneous ideas that you get. And I think it really allows us to not be limited in being just saccharine or just sweet or just edgy. We have epiphanies every day for all different emotions. And I like that we have that range to write to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, in the circle of life that you're going through them at all times. I mean, you have two toddlers, or you have a newborn. Is your baby still a newborn?
4 months. Yeah, 4 months.
4 months. That's still a newborn. That what you're going through with them is very different than what my daughter's about to turn 15, and I'm having all sorts of maternal epiphanies that I was not having when she was in diapers. I love how your name looks letterpressed on the back of your cards. Like, it's a beautiful word to see letterpressed. It looks, the brand looks very nice. So I'm sorry, go on.
We've had a couple buyers come in and, to our delight, think that it was like, oh, we thought epiphanies might be religious. And then, whoa, it's not. So I love too that there's this little bit of like extreme dichotomy where like people might think it's like very, very, soft or even religious. And then clearly it's not.
It's not that kind of epiphany. So I love that you first got into letterpress when you were married because you saw a fancy invitation suite and wanted to do it yourself. I've sort of come to consider those invitation flat-lies paper porn. Like, I think they just like get into brides under their skin and they can't stop. Like, they're not happy until they get that suite.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to hear about the invitation suite that took you in, and then sort of like about the process of learning to letterpress that brought your range into existence.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't thought about it in quite some time, and now looking back, it was a very traditional, simple Bella Figuera invitation suite.
Those are gorgeous,
quadruple thick, square, just black and white letterpress. But it was about $5,000, which now I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to get married for our 10-year. Let's do it again. But like, it's a lot of money. And at the time, like, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment like that. There was no way in hell I was going to be able to afford a $5,000 wedding suite. And so I started researching local Los Angeles companies that would help you learn how to letterpress in order to get this invitation, to design it at like a fraction of the cost. Mm-hmm. And that led me to my printing kind of mentor, a woman named Mabel, who lives in Los Angeles and has actually mentored quite a few letterpressers in the industry. And she's got a line called La La Press. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. And so she sort of brought me in and taught me how to letterpress print unrelated to a greeting card line. And my father was diagnosed with leukemia and died within 2 months, right around that. So we moved our wedding up. And as a result, I never actually printed my own wedding invitations. Mabel did it for me because I was in the hospital with him. And it became this kind of friendship that we had. And I was like, God, I want to spend time with her again. And I want to also like spend more money with her to thank her for printing these cards that weren't even supposed to be part of the deal. And so I said, hey, I have some of this stand-up material. I think I want to just do turn these into cards. And as a result, I got to spend more time with Mabel and learn how to print more. And that's sort of how Paper Epiphanies was born, in that weird in between of loving wedding invitations and losing my dad and having a lot of stand-up material that I no longer had a use for.
Wow. So it kind of was an epiphany. Like, when you're in that point in life when you're sort of shifting gears and finding what the next thing
Definitely.
is.
My dad was 61 when he passed. And I think I was at this moment in my life where I was like, I've been doing publicity for 10 years. I moved to Los Angeles to do something creative, and press releases are only so creative. So I really wasn't, maximizing or performing. And in LA, you can't really just do stand up for fun. You can't do anything for fun in Los Angeles. Like if you're doing anything remotely related to entertainment, you must be trying to be an actor. Like there's no other, like now in Portland, I could do like an open mic night for fun and nobody'd be like, oh, so you're trying to be famous? They would just be like, "Oh, you're trying to have fun, and this is a hobby." But there's no hobbies in Los Angeles.
Right? It's such a crazy world. It's it seems like I've never lived there. I've only visited, and I'm more of a New York, so I never really feel at home in LA. But like, it's such a it's so intense. Like people are and they're so much more serious in a way. I think that people in New York aren't about the business and image and like.
Oh yeah. It's like crazy. And so as a result, I had no creative outlet really for, writing or stand up or, performing, because I wasn't at that point no longer trying to make a career out of it. I just wanted to do it for fun. And so writing cards kind of became that outlet for creativity that I had been missing. And I was working full time for the first 15 months that I started Paper Epiphanies.
Wow. That's a lot.
It was a lot. And it was my favorite part of the story of that time of my life. I was like, I can do both. I had worked, to get to this level. I was making 6 figures as a publicist. And, I reached that point in my career where I had really great relationships with journalists. I wasn't like cold calling so much. I could call, respected peers and I was on that level of publicity and journalism.
Right. You had sort of reached a point where you could kind of cool your heels a little bit. And that's why you were able to do something
right. So I was
totally
able to do this fun side project, so to speak. And then at the time, my boss, my last publicity job was for a toy company. Mm-hmm. And she said, hey, we have this project we want to give you. Disney rated it a medium in terms of success. And that was Frozen.
Wow.
So she gave
it was medium?
Yeah. So medium? I think it's public knowledge now, I hope, or this is going to be a very expose interview. But they do internal ratings for their movies before they come out. And they had ranked Frozen on the same level as Brave, the movie Brave, in terms of they thought it was going to be that level of success. It was kind of alternative at the time with nobody getting married and, this rogue princess. And so they weren't sure how it was going to be received. And so I was given all of the consumer product PR for the movie Frozen. Mm-hmm. Which then took that cooling my heels position to an extreme. I was traveling all over. We had an Elsa doll that sang Let It Go in 20 languages. This is before I had children, so I didn't understand any of it. I was like, who the fuck wants this shit? Now I'm like, free toys? I wish I could go back in time. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I actually think it was a blessing because I ended up resigning from my job a lot earlier than I probably would have, because it had become so demanding working on Frozen and having Paper Epiphanies, which was kind of really, I had won the Rising Star award, and I had kind of hit this trajectory where the two just couldn't continue together. And so I resigned in October of 2015 from my publicity job. And that it kind of forced my hand. So I'm actually really grateful that I wasn't just cooling my jets, because who knows how long I would have continued to do both. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and so it was hard to not be having an A in both. I was probably I think I was still doing a B in both, but I was ready to be able to commit to something full time, and so years ago, but.
Absolutely. I mean, in Frozen, that was a media friend. My daughter was actually she was maybe 5 when Brave came out, and then when Frozen came out, and Frozen was probably her last I'm going gaga over Disney type of thing, just because she aged out. But I can't imagine keeping up with both of them. But I just think it's so cool that you started Paper Epiphanies as sort of almost like a backdoor, almost to just sort of as a creative outlet, but it soon became center stage and really took over your life. Which is a great lead into my next question. I mean, so when you started in 30 square feet of a 1-bedroom apartment in 2014, 2 wholesale accounts. By January 2020, you were in over 2,000 stores. You were featured on NPR, Forbes. I mean, you were a major player. But by April, just a few months later, more than 95% of those 2,000 retailers were closed. Your accounts receivable was the highest ever. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are owed to you. Yet at that point, you see a spike in direct to consumer. So just like when you started, it's just you packaging and shipping every last card. But then you totally shifted gears yet again. And on April Fool's Day of this year, you opened your flagship store in Portland. Your card wall accessorized in neon, hot pink neon, just won an industry award. So I just wanted to ask you, how it occurred to you to open a store. I mean, just as everything else was closing down. When I started at Gibson Deck years and years ago, my editor was this very wise woman named Phyllis Swede, who taught me so much. And she used to say, people ask me what kind of store I would open, and I always tell them I would never open a store, period. So, but you have to imagine it in like a very worldwide
people at the same time. And she's like, never.
I would never open a store, I tell you, and you can print that.
Yes.
So why did you take that? Like, what made you want to open a store?
I just had like PTSD from that, like rehearing that post. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was all quoted from a post that Victoria did on Facebook, by the way.
Yeah, last March, just like most businesses in America, we had to furlough our team. And it didn't matter at the time. I mean, it mattered that we had to furlough our team, but we were so slow. It was like, okay, well, every store that buys from us is closed. But then we started getting this really amazing spike of consumer orders online, which was so wonderful. However, I was the only employee of the company. So I was packaging all these orders again. And I had this epiphany moment of like, holy shit, like at the end of the day, this is how it started. And it's just people that resonated with our cards. And now here I am again, packaging these cards. But I think for me, it was a realignment in the fact that what I do best is B2C. For those business to consumer. I mean, I was a publicist for so long. And since our, inception, Paper Epiphanies has really just been a wholesale brand, selling in other stores. And we've had a, pretty great success with that. However, there's not a place where people can go to be consumed by our brand. There wasn't. They could go to our website, but a website's a website. They could go into Paper Source, which, had 7 of our cards, or maybe one of our like best cult retailers that would carry 30 of our SKUs. Okay. Mm-hmm. But we have over 500 SKUs. Like, where could people go to be immersed in that brand? And so I don't say always, I never, a lot of people are like, my dream one day is to open a store. I didn't start Paper Epiphanies with that dream, but it became more and more obvious to me each year that in order to really experience our brand the way that buyers do when they go to a trade show, we have to open a store, because that's the only way people can really get it. And they have. I mean, we pushed our opening twice, and then I realized that we could open on April Fools, and I was like, that's perfect. Let's just do it. And that way, I also in my head, I was like, if we don't make the deadline, I could say, just kidding, April Fools, opening. And then it's like, safe.
And if anything goes wrong, it's April Fool's Day. Exactly. You have like this built-in. I mean, I love the idea that you are creating like a space for your brand, because I mean, one of the things that consumers miss out at is the magic of trade shows where you can walk into a booth and you're like immersed into this funky little world.
Totally. It's cool. And I do think that showed me, I also think buyers got it more. They'd come in and be like, oh, like to see one context, one card of ours, especially if it's like one of our true like Paper Epiphanies tone. Yes. Out of context, you're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. But to see like what we're doing and the way we're talking and how it sits together, I don't think there's a match for that. I think our conversion at trade shows is very high. People that come into our booth that don't write an order is very low. And so the same with our customer in the store. I mean, a lot of people that have come in know us from social media, from our website, but a ton of people are just neighborhood people who come in, and there's that moment of stand-up comedy again, where if I'm in the shop, I'm like waiting. First of all, I'm waiting for the Karen to be like, why does everything say fuck? I'm with my granddaughter. Like I'm waiting for that. May
I speak to the manager? Oh, you're gonna shine at that moment.
I can't wait. But more so, it's that moment, right, where people are walking up to the card wall, and I have that same moment of like getting on stage and like waiting for them to laugh for the first time. And there's nothing better than just like we had a couple in last weekend that was just almost embarrassingly loud laughers, just laughing. They were on the card wall for like 40 minutes, and I was like, this is so great. It was like such really like full circle moment of just hearing people laugh. But yeah, I think for us, we were already all in. We had a large warehouse that we were paying for, so to speak, during COVID. It's not like we went from our basement to a storefront, so to speak. I think we had already been a point in our business trajectory where we had a lot of overhead. And so while this was a risk, it was a mitigated risk. And I think the reward has already shown to be so great in the ability for us to really showcase our brand on such a massive scale.
Yeah. I mean, and I can imagine when you see people come in, it must be fun to watch, see what they laugh at, and then see what they ultimately buy.
Yeah.
I would think that gives you like, it's like market research insight that's invaluable. Like
the one thing I will say that I will finally admit to all my stores that have been asking me for years, like, do you just have a card that says Happy Mother's Day? And I would be like, no, that's so fucking boring. We don't have a card that only says Happy Mother's Day. We do not have it. We're never going to make it. It's fucking dumb. Like, say something, even if you don't like your mom, like have it be like a funny sentiment. I swear to God, the number of cards we fucking sold that just say Happy Mother's Day is shocking. People are so just like boring. All they like come in. Do you have a card that just says Happy Mother's Day? I'm like, oh my God, they're right. People just want a card that says Happy Mother's Day. It's so weird. Anyway, so retail partners, we will be coming out with a card that just says Happy Mother's Day next year because apparently people want that.
But you can do it says fuck it, Happy Mother's Day.
People are like, oh no, just Happy Mother's Day. I guess we're gonna have to be bold and edgy with our text and our color. Okay, fine. But yeah, I mean, already I'm learning things for sure. But I do think that that people are pleasantly surprised. I think that even people that, you know, judging a book by its cover, people tell me, oh, here's where they usually shop. And I can tell by what they buy, kind of the type of consumer they are. They still find something. And if they don't, that's okay. I mean, I think that's always been kind of one of our mottos is we're not for everyone. And I think our store is the same way. I think we curate what we carry very specifically to be a complement to the Paper Epiphanies brand. And there are, of course, a couple of those down the middle happy birthday general cards. But for the most part, what you're going to find is paper with attitude. And we're okay with that.
The sense I get from the images I've seen of your store, I mean, it really is like a living articulation of your brand. And that is why, as you said, when you entered the Noted Awards, which you won Best Card Wall for, by the way, congratulations. You said there was like a field where you can kind of like describe whatever it is you're entering, and you just put in the field, people are losing their shit over it. Which I thought was great.
I realized we were going to do this beautiful post with all of the like finalists, and it was like wood carved, amazing this, and I was like, people are losing their shit over it. I was like, well, I mean, that's kind of our brand anyway. But I was like, wow, I really elaborated.
I think it's great. I mean, like, it's such a powerful 7 words to describe. I know. Well, and everybody's card wall was very special, and all retailers approach their card wall in a very special way. And, you know, that is true to them. And I just thought that was a great way to be true to yourself. And I mean, like, I love that you surrounded it in hot pink neon. I mean, like, I'm a big fan of neon. As somebody who fell in love with old New York, you know, anyone who loves old New York loves neon because it disappeared. So I just thought that was such a great choice. So I want to hear about how you approached bringing your brand to physical life. And you know, you obviously knew a lot of paper stores. Like, what did you want to do in bringing your brand to life? And what did you not want to do? And what did you do instead?
Great question. I mean, I think to begin with, we worked with a company called Mandy Rigger Interiors, who knows all the specifics of like how to build a wall and things like that. I think maybe I was like her best, worst client. I don't know, but I had a very specific vision. And I think that was helpful in that, like, a lot of times she said brands come to her and they're like, they're starting their brand for the first time or something, and they don't have. And I had a very, very specific sense of what I wanted.
That was not your problem.
Yeah, that was not our problem. I was like, this is what I want. This is where the card wall is going to go. This is what I want, you know. But she helped kind of be like, okay, well, this needs to be this high, and helped with our choices in terms of like, let's not make it look like a porn store. And that was actually a conversation we had often, surprisingly enough, because our colors are pink and black. And so very quickly, it could have been like a porn store.
And so neon.
And neon. So we had to find a way to make it luxury with, an elegant edge, which is what our brand is. How do we pull back in some places and then go extreme in other places and make this still feel very elegant and luxurious, not like a porn store. And we do sell vibrators as well. So we had to be very careful.
No, you could easily like make a wrong left turn and end up in like Times Square, 1972.
And I think the choice that we ultimately made to not, for a while, we were toying with there being neon words over the card wall. And I think when we kind of started making the neon more of an architectural element and letting the card shine and leading with the product and the brand, I think always helped bring us back to kind of home. But I knew that I wanted to curate our store by color. I knew that I wanted to work with almost all female-owned brands. We don't work with only female-owned brands because there's other brands I think that tell a great story, whether those are LGBTQ founders or a lot of brands have female artists. And they're not owned by women, but that's another great way to showcase female talent. So I kind of went into building out the brand knowing that. And I've also known for the last 3 years that I would eventually do this. So I had a long line of brands I knew I wanted to purchase from. So people often say like, oh, how did you curate all these items? And I'm like, well, I've been doing it in my head for years, right? Like for years.
Right. How many brands do you buy? How many in total would you say?
I would say another 60 to 70.
That's a nice mix.
Brands.
But I mean, you've been at shows. You certainly have you've gotten acquainted with people that you wanted to carry and just acquainted with different visual aesthetics, definitely. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, our number 2 category is books, which I think is rare for stationery stores in terms of a lot of people carry like gifty type books, but not like true, like we have a lot of actual books like fiction, nonfiction, coffee table books. They're all kind of related to Paper Epiphanies in some way in terms of the tone or what they're touching on. But we do carry a lot of books. And I think that it feels fresh when you come into our store. I think I created a video for Noted, a brand video, talking about our brand. I don't know if you happen to see that.
No, I'm going to have to.
Yeah. But I mentioned in the video that when we were sourcing for Paper Epiphanies, we came across a lot of dog shit. And as you can imagine, it was a polarizing video. The Greeting Card Association messaged me and loved it, and then used it as a sales tactic and signed it president of cards that kind of look like dog shit, but also pop up.
George said that. That's so funny.
And I actually did buy his cards for the store after that. When he showed me some female artist cards, it was a great sales tactic. But
this was I'm showing you a card that George sent me after the Noted and Noted Awards. Like, you haven't lived until you get a card from George, who's like a very well brought up Southern person that says, "Bitch, please."
I'm wearing off on him. I was his mentee a few years back. And so we have a special bond, George and I. But the video was polarizing. And I think it's funny because if you know Paper Epiphanies, it wasn't that polarizing. It's just kind of funny and edgy. But I think it was the fact that I was called, and of course I didn't name any names, but yeah, I did find a lot of dog shit when I was sourcing for the store. And I think that just reiterates more the fact that what we've curated for our shop is beautiful and high quality. But yeah, I also said that we don't carry enamel pins or iron-on patches, which also was polarizing. And
that's very controversial.
It's not to poke fun at any other brands, but more so to just say, like, I think we have a really clear vision. We don't sell makeup. We don't sell jewelry. We don't sell enamel pins. And if we do, awesome. There's a ton of stores that probably make a ton of money on that. It's just not what we do. And so I think having that very distinct editorial eye for us, for our brand, is kind of what is making our shop different than a lot of other shops.
It's so important. You obviously will come in knowing what your brand is, but I mean, I see it in retail, in stores I shop in locally, and even at shows where people just shop for themselves. Like, what you like was not necessarily going to be what will sell. And, you curated a brand and an aesthetic, and you're only going to sell what speaks to that. And I love it. I mean, I really get bored in a store that's not like that. Like, I was so excited to go back to stores, and like, if I go into a boring store, it's like insulting. Like, come on. I sat at home for over a year. Like, this is all you have for me.
Yeah, people have been, I do think, I'm curious to see how long the footprint changes, because people will spend a long time in the shop. And I think that's more of like a post-COVID fatigue versus the actual normal consumer behavior, because people come in and they're like, oh, I've been inside for like a year, and they just like look at everything because they're just so happy to be like out of their homes. So I think we will see maybe the time frame shortening. But yeah, I think people like to have a different experience. And going back to your editor who said she would never open a store, I think, yeah, I'd never open one of those stores either. Like, do you sell baby clothes or blenders? Like, what's happening? I'm very confused. Like,
do you have a card that just says Happy Mother's Day? Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, I think, I feel like all stores should be super special at this point. I know when I walk back into a trade show, which I cannot wait to do, but the days when I always walked into a trade show, there was always a part of me that was like, 80% of this is landfill. Like 80% is just not thought out, not well designed, not well made.
Thank you. Also known as dog shit.
Exactly. And like, I really feel like I will, if my life's work can be just raising the product and putting less dog shit out in the world, like, I will really have succeeded.
And I think, it's not necessarily about money. We've never had larger than a 10 by 10 booth at a trade show. We've never had one of those huge, big, fancy booths, but it's just about the quality of your product and the editorial eye and curating and having that specific point of view. That's what makes it not dog shit. It doesn't have to be this glory. I mean, I hope one day we can have a glorious booth with a couch and all that stuff, but we've never had that. So it's not just about, having the biggest and the best, but just having, to your point, like something that's well thought out and beautiful. And you can really tell, especially as a buyer now. I'm shocked at the quality control of the stuff that comes to our shop, even from brands we've ordered from. It's just, and it doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to arrive not broken.
Right, exactly. Just send it like it looked on the shelf. That's
exactly. It's totally fine. Just wrap it up in some stuff and just get it to me not broken.
So, you have always known your brand so well, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering if you do see the industry a little differently now that you are a retailer. Like, are you walking any shows this summer, and do you think you will walk it differently than you would have when you were just a maker, not just a maker, but just wholesaling?
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna be at Shop Object in September as a buyer, not going to do any trade shows this year on the wholesale front. But yeah, I think I'll always be looking with an eye in terms of like what we could carry in our store. And then, I guess the industry seems a little more competitive now. I don't know. I think we always pride ourselves on, being an industry that shares knowledge and, kind of is inclusive in some way, because in a lot of ways, cards are brand agnostic. Consumers buy a card because it resonates with them, not because it's made by Paper Epiphanies. That's just a fact.
Right. And I've always loved that about our industry, that we're so friendly. And
so I think owning a store now has a different competitive feeling, in that not from the industry, but from other stores or other, retailers in Portland or just nationally. I can just kind of sense a little bit of like, we're coming for you, because we are.
Right. Well, everybody is selling differently. Some people are direct to consumer. Some people, like, you're a maker, but you just open your studio for a couple hours a week. Everybody's doing it all differently. And there was a time at Stationery Show when all the buyers were people who had had these stationery shops for 50 years and had been doing their business the same way.
Yeah.
As always.
A very specific vision in some ways disruptive to the industry is kind of a little bit like, it makes people just kind of be like, well, why are we doing what we're doing? And I think that's a great question to ask in any industry. Like, what is your why? Going back to that, why did you open a store, or why do you want to carry our line? And I just think, each day that goes on, we further refine that vision, and we're just really excited to continue growing the brand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finally, we mentioned this, and I wanted to touch on this. when you did PR, you did it for like super, super big brands. You mentioned Disney and that was like the biggest kids property of the last decade. But you also were at Fox, Warner Brothers, and Hilton. What do you think you took from them that they do that you do on a much smaller scale with Paper Epiphanies?
It's a great question. I think, I've always kind of adhered to the plan for the business you want, not the business you have. And I've always operated, at least from a publicity standpoint, from that lens. I always knew that I wanted to have a bigger, stronger company, but I had to grow smart. But my publicity has always been tailored to that. And I think I learned that not to be stingy. I'll give a million cards away. Like I'll give you editors, people, like sampling to me is like one of the number one things we do. I'll send 50 cards to a store that I want to get into. And again, that's come with, time and money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think people are very nervous to give product away. And coming from a PR background, you have to get product in editors' hands. You have to find ways to connect with them. That's real. Don't just unsolicited send product. You have
to be
targeted. Be targeted, but be willing to, put yourself out there, to send products, to invite people into your shop, to find ways to connect. And I think you can't underestimate the power of marketing and PR. Our store is a giant billboard. Our wholesales our wholesales already greatly increased. Our online traffic is way up. And the only factor is the store. It's a big billboard. And so I think for me, I will always lead with as a marketer, as a publicist, with what's the story that we're telling? Why are we telling it? How can we tell it better? And I think that's a successful model for any brand. To know your story and to continually remind the public of that story is only just going to make your brand more visible and more cohesive. So I've always kind of operated with that toolbox coming out of marketing and PR.
Right. That's so smart. People will come to me and be like, well, how do I get in Oprah? How do I get in? And why? I don't know why they're asking me, but
you're like, Oprah retired. Okay.
I'm like, Oprah and I do not email back and forth. So I do not have an in. No, but I always say, go to your Barnes and Noble or a magazine shop, find the magazines you want, look at the masthead, find the name of sometimes it's the market editor, sometimes it's, they'll have all different names, but if you look in the magazine, you find the person, you get their email, you reach out to them and you start building a relationship. You don't send blind, contact at cosmopolitan.com.
The worst is when I would train assistants under me, know someone's beat. If they're the food editor, don't send them a fucking card. That's just going to make them angry. Find out what they write about, find out what they care about. They're human, they're people. They also have deadlines. And that's what I said on, Proof to Product, but make their job easier. Also, publicists have great ideas sometimes, or brands have great ideas. Share that with the journalists. Maybe that's something they'd be interested in writing about. And it's not about your brand. A lot of times, that Marie Claire article that came out a while back, which we were a big part in, that is an amazing reporter who kind of was just tossing around an idea. And I helped kind of develop that idea. And who else could you talk to? What else could this be about? How can we make this a cooler, bigger story? Not just about us, but helping that reporter or that journalist, create a cool story. And that's fun. That's fun for me because I used to do that for a living. But I think if you approach it like that and not just me, any relationship in life,
right,
you're going to have more success.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that when you make that me approach, like, editors know it. Anybody knows it, when you're just approaching someone with your hand out, like offer something. I mean, not that you need to send me tons of cards or anything, but just think about, the other person's perspective.
If someone doesn't know you, that's the same thing, like that would be awkward if someone was just like hitting me up for like, build a relationship. Compliment them on one of their past stories, invite them into your world in a way that feels real and not just like schwarmy and like cheesy, like what is the way you can do it in an authentic way? Just like building a friendship or a relationship with a colleague. Like you have to earn that trust over time, and reporting and journalism and PR is the same way.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you. Yes. So I wanted to ask you about something. I don't remember where I heard you saying this. It was in some kind of GCA marketing material, but you were talking about, I've been quoting this so much since you said this. You were talking about millennials, and you were saying that they don't need a holiday, for example, Valentine's Day, to send a card to their friend. They don't need to be told by our culture that it is thinking of you week, and therefore you need to be thinking of someone. Like the process is a little different with them, according to what you said, that they see the card that's right for someone, they buy it, and then they send it. So that's amazing. And that's like a really, really big, important shift, I think. So I want to hear your thoughts on this phenomenon.
Great question. I think I first brought that up when I gave the publisher speech at the greeting card convention in Cleveland. And we had noticed, over the first 3 to 4 years of our company that we didn't do that well at holiday. Like we sold Christmas cards and like that was fine. And it was like a moderate amount. And then our year-round cards just sell like fire, and not even birthday, just like friendship, connection,
encouragement,
like just kind of everyday cards. And we started to track this. And yeah, to your point, millennials and especially Gen Z, they pride themselves on individuality. They are, they're into customization, but they're also very into like very specific inside joke relationships, even more so than past generations. And so they don't want to be told like, okay, let's all send each other a card for this.
They do not like the organized activities.
They want to be individual. And as a result, creating cards, which maybe used to be seeming niche, cards that are very specific friendship to friendship sending situations, those type of cards that we do the most of, that's our biggest category, even over birthday, which is kind of an industry no-no. We see great success with that because that is our consumer. That's our, women, 25 to 54, but 25 to 44 really is kind of our core demo. And they buy those cards all day long because they resonate on a level of vernacular that they see themselves in. And so they buy that card for the friend, regardless of the occasion. Gen Z is similar, even more so that they were born with the internet. They were born immersed in technology. You have a Gen Zer, right?
Right. No, my daughter was born the same year as the iPhone.
Yeah. So it's so nuts. And I'm a millennial, but like kind of cheating. I'm like, I'm 36. So I'm like, I think I'm 2 years into millennial, but I have a lot of Gen X tendencies. And so younger millennials and Gen Z are really the ones who've just always had technology. And they're the ones that come into our store and they want a bullet journal and washi, and they know what it is. And they want a specific card for their friend who's going to Ibiza for the first time and whatever, or and they see these cards and they're so tactile because I think it's because they're so digital. The rest of their world has always been digital. And so now they crave that tactile, and they love that it sounds like them. It's not like their grandmother's greeting card.
Right.
They forget they don't even know that it used to be stodgy. Like they think it's cool and hip, and they don't even realize that it's like century-old tradition. You're like, hello? No. They don't get it.
I mean, they're too young to even know. It's so revolutionary just because of the prevailing wisdom. I mean, like a company like Crane, for example, the cornerstone of American stationery, they make all their money for Christmas on Christmas cards and wedding invitation. But, most of their money is, fourth quarter. And so for someone like you to come in and be like, oh no, we sell year round and not birthday cards. It's just all about communication. And it's just whenever the mood strikes someone, like that is radically different.
Some other brands actually do pay me to come in and talk to them about these things. But no, it is a radical thought, scary in some ways, scary that, what happened to holiday or how can we get holiday back, I guess. But again, that customization, people send their holiday photo card out and that suffices for their kind of holiday card. And they go on about their business and they wait till they can send their next authentic, unique greeting card to their friend. Right. I do think there's a lot of room even for, our traditional big stationers to expand. Like with Mother's Day, we found a lot of success with Mother's Day cards for other women. Like I send a lot of cards to my girlfriends now on Mother's Day, which I don't think used to be really a pattern we saw. We would send it to our mom or to our wife, but now we want to validate other women in our lives who are also mothers. And that's kind of a new extension of that holiday.
Right.
So,
it's different ways of recognizing.
Yeah. How can we continue to expand and add to those holidays in a way that changes over time and becomes more authentic with each new generation?
Absolutely. As you were talking about your generation, I'm Gen X, and like we're like the sandwich generation where between boomers who told us everything that we had to do and millennials there was just like more of them. And, we're very cynical. I think we can kind of pick up this, we never really wanted to do anything we were told to do anyway. So, I think we'll get it. And, but I do think that is how, cards stay alive, is that they're picked up by the next generation and sort of, modified to how they communicate and, and then it just keeps evolving. I think it's great. And I think there's room for everyone at the table. Judging the Louis every year, and I judge the Louis, I'm like, I wonder how many of those cards I'm going to see with like the long rhyming verses in them,
I was on the Louis committee this year and I judged the Louis this year and I did not participate, even though technically you're allowed, but I was like, no, Paper Epiphanies will not be participating. We're going to be completely non-biased. So we did not participate, but we were judges. And it was really exciting, I think. And obviously we don't want to give anything away, but I think it was, maybe to your point, very diverse entries. And also I think a lot of the winners we're going to see it's just great. I think it's great for the industry and a great testament to kind of the changes that we're seeing.
It was really fun. And it was fun to do the noted and noted, which is a little more designy, less judges. It's interesting to see them both. Not that one should be mass and one should be, right, more boutique-y, but I think, there's so much great design out there. The more we can kind of salute it and show what's going on, the better for all of us. So I cannot thank you enough for coming on the Paper Fall. This was such a treat to catch up with you. And
I feel like I can't believe it's already been an hour. Time flies.
I know, it's a lot of fun.
It's really fun. It's nice to talk to an industry expert who gets it too. I think so much of the subtext we already know, so you can have a really good conversation.
Right. Well, I think I've missed having these conversations. I'm sure you have. I mean, part of the thing about our industry is we like to get together and have, these discussions. And I never realized how much I miss seeing people until I have a podcast interview. And then it all comes back to me.
So wine and it's going to happen soon. We're coming back. I feel it.
Well, now I really want to go to Shop Objects. So maybe we can walk a couple rows.
Let's do it. You come to Portland and see the shop.
I would love to. I keep saying to Amy that I want us to do a stationery road trip where we just spend a month driving to stores and that
would be awesome. The itinerant printer did that. He was a letterpress guy and he traveled around visiting all the letterpress studios. It was really cool. Well, we have a couple more Paper Epiphany stores in the works. So
Wow.
We'll see if maybe one's closer to a city near you.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for coming on the Paperfold. And thank you so much for listening. As always, email me at sarah@thepapernerd.com with anything I can do for you. And if you're liking what you're hearing, please subscribe and leave me a good rating and review. I can't tell you how much that helps. Thank you so much, Paper Peeps. Please stay well.